All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It's the Urban Conservative Podcast. We got a very special episode tonight, Juvenile Detention Exposed. We got former detention youth counselor Booker G's on the show. The Urban Conservative Podcast starts right around now.
Hey, buddy, do you like NASCAR? Do you like a Tribe Called Quest? Well, you gonna love the Urban Conservative.
Do you like manwich and nachos? Well, then you'd love the Urban Conservative.
Do you like guns? Do you like butter? Well, you're gonna love the Urban Conservative.
Yo, what's good, son? You like pit bulls, say? You like solving Sudoku puzzles? Then you gonna love the Urban Conservative.
Hey, buddy, if your car making a sound like this, you might want to get you some power steering fluid and check out the Urban Conservative Podcast.
Welcome to the Urban Conservative Podcast, where we do not believe that avocado toast can save the planet or the world will end, because cars use gasoline. You won't hear that Wi-Fi is a basic human right, or that billionaires are secretly supervillains. Here, we do not believe that electric cars run on hopes and dreams. You also won't hear that anyone who disagrees with us is a fascist, or that socialism will make everyone rich. You won't be gender affirmed or offered any opportunity to share your preferred pronouns. If this causes you any discomfort, please rest assured that we couldn't possibly care less. For everyone else, thank you, and please stand by.
My fellow Americans, it's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. This is without a doubt the best podcast on the internet. It's about to go down here on the Urban Conservative.
3, 2, 1.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It is the Urban Conservative Podcast, live and direct as always. First and foremost, before we jump into the show, today is Memorial Day 2026. We just want to take a moment to pause and thank you and thank the people who have given all. Memorial Day is not about every veteran. It's about those who chose to serve our country and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So shouts out to them and their loved ones. And by virtue of that, a shout out to all the veterans. So that's what Memorial Day is about. We wanted to kick it off. Started there. Bro, what's good, man?
Yo, everything is amazing, man. It's a beautiful Memorial Day. Out here on the East End, it was a little slower because of the weather. You know, usually it's mayhem out here. Was it so mayhemy? But
no mayhem.
Well, had a great weekend. I've been excited for a couple of weeks to do this show because the subject matter is something that's near and dear to us. It is something that's affected our lives and kind of helps steer us in that direction. So. Funny enough, though, my weekend, and I'm gonna get ready to share the photo. Funny enough, my weekend, right? Went to go see the new Mandalorian and Grogu at the Southampton movie theater, and Brooke Shields was in the building. Brooke Shields was in the building, and not only was Brooke Shields in the building, Brooke Shields bought us popcorn and soda. A random act of kindness. She was in line next to us and was like, "Hey, I'd like to pay for these folks' things." And so, a longer story short, but she was super cool, and it made me think. Right, I was like, "Wow, look at the life that we have, where you randomly get popcorn bought for you by Brooke Shields at a movie theater." Right, and so that was my weekend. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was happy with that. That was an experience.
The dope thing about that is where we come from and what we came from. We would have never thunk.
There's no way.
We do the Congress thing. We know all the elected officials and all of that. But to be chilling at the movie theater with the lady who went with Mike Jack to the Grammys.
Come on.
Is nutty.
Come on now.
That's
Come on
nutty. That's
So
crazy.
I say that to say it was a wonderful weekend. It was a great Memorial Day weekend for us. It was a good weekend, and like I said, I've been really excited to do this show. So let's do it. So the brother we about to bring on the show, former detention counselor, and like I said, you guys understand. We say this on the podcast all the time that we grew up as a in these institutions in New York City in the early 80s and going through the foster care system and the child protective services system and being wards of the state and and all these different things, and we've seen firsthand some of these things, but we've never seen it from we've never seen a counselor stepping out there and putting their story and themselves out there. So without further ado, we want to welcome for the first time to the Urban Conservative Podcast, Arthur Booker Jesus in the building. Salute, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Indeed, indeed,
And we, like
indeed.
we told you off the air, we appreciate you. You know what I mean? But like I wanted to get this on the record with everybody, and that if you guys know people that are counseling youth and trying to mentor the young people, help them and let them know that they appreciate it. So thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for protecting young people, and thank you for
hmm
sharing your story. And for those who don't know you, give us the background. Who is Booker G's? And let's just start there so the folks at home get to know who you are.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys speaking on this topic. It just seems like a lot of people don't give two shits about these kids in this system. And it just seems like after my experience working there, I felt like I had to do something more than just be a part of the system. I had to speak about it. And that's when I decided to write the book. So overall, what actually happened was I wrote the book 10 years ago. Okay. And when I wrote the book, that was about around the time when I resigned from the job. Um, and then I was in the process of writing a second book. And the publisher that I've been working with fell in love with the first one, just felt like the first one really didn't get enough attention. So they were like, let's really focus on that. Let's do some editing on it. Let's change the cover. They just flipped the colors of the cover. And because originally the cover was predominantly black, but now it's predominantly white, with the spiral bob wires connecting almost like the Twilight Zone type of thing. So basically that's where I'm at right now. And it comes at a very good time because it just seems like a lot of the issues that I spoke about 10 years ago, they haven't changed. I mean, these
Wow.
kids are still getting sexually assaulted in these facilities. There are a bunch of, I was just on IG today and I just saw a bunch of ads for youth that were in the setting to fill out a claim that they were violated. So this thing is still going on. And right now, the opportunity that I have speaking with you guys really shines a light on what's going on in these facilities.
So let me
That's
back
where I'm
up
at.
real quick. We're from a professional perspective, is that like you got out of school and went into that work? Like what was that
No,
path that got you involved in that whole line of work?
it's weird because I have a bachelor's degree in fashion merchandising. So my goal was to become a fashion designer. That's what I was trained to do. That's what I went to school for. I went to Delaware State University and I got a bachelor's in fashion merchandising. And what happened was for me, it seemed like my life was taking a detour. At the time, my wife and I, we ran a store in Harlem and we were selling, it was a woman's boutique selling female t-shirts. And things didn't work out with us and she took a different route and I had to focus on being a single parent. So that's when I decided to follow up on a full-time gig to really fight for custody of my children. And that's how that started. I have background working with youth. I work summer youth in Yonkers. I've worked with PAL in Harlem. So I have experience working with the youth, but that's not something that I originally planned for myself. So I took a detour and I went in this environment and I was just overwhelmed with how chaotic the situation was and how these young men were treated in this setting. And as much as I tried to be a positive role model for these young people, it just seemed like the administration, they wanted to make it more, more punitive. Like they wanted them, it wasn't about rehabilitating them. It was about, really showing them who was the boss and putting them in check. And it was a struggle. And I believe that in a lot of ways, my fashion background helped in me writing the book, because when you read the book, it's pretty much set up with situations where I developed relationships with these young men and how that turned out, speaking about, whether it be, physical assaults, whether it be gang initiations, um, everything's in there that you can
Wow.
imagine. I mean, I know you guys probably are aware of what can possibly go down, and it was really all going down in there. And I was pretty much like a fly on the wall, just speaking about all these situations. And a lot of people have commended me on how I was able to describe what I saw, because it made them feel like they were me in this setting, watching all this happen.
Wow.
So we tell people, and I try to explain to them that we're not being extreme in what I'm about to say. That these facilities at a certain point that were housing youth were doing nothing more than preparing them for prison.
Pretty much. That's
And
exactly
and
what they
that
were
and they
doing.
people told me, well, that you can't really say that. No, I'm like, nah, y'all don't understand.
Mhm.
The reality of it is, and that's why like it's so important. Your book is so important, and people need to understand what's going on in there, is because there is a epidemic of fatherlessness that
Mhm.
matches with this amount of youth that we see locked up there. So when the resources that are intended to help these young men and women, because it's not just men, it's predominantly
It's
young men, but
females,
it's women, it's
females too.
females too, right?
Mhm.
The in my From what I'm learning, that these resources were severely mismanaged, that a
Mhm.
lot of the staff that was in there either a shouldn't have been in there or didn't have the right qualifications to really help in this rehabilitation process. So it's been a mismanaged system since we were kids. It's going back to the late 70s in New York City. If I am I off on that?
Nah, you're correct. It's exactly what it is. I mean, it's the roots of just the jail, the school to jail pipeline that goes on, and it's the roots of just them being incarcerated on a regular basis and keeping them there and preparing them for Rikers or what the next step would be. And that was something that was really that threw me back in a lot of ways, just speaking to these young men and how they were excited about the opportunity to go to Rikers, almost like it was like a rites of passage, almost like they were going to Disney World or something. And that was something that I struggled with, just trying to change their mindset. And in the beginning, I really didn't care as much, because here it was, I had a full-time job, I had
Mm.
medical benefits, I had, life insurance, I had all that stuff going on, which was something I didn't have at the time. And I was excited to just know that here it is, I'm gonna have an opportunity to get custody of my children, and we're living well, the money's right and everything. But then I just started seeing just how this thing was a revolving door. And these kids constantly would leave and come back. And they made it set up in a way where they wanted to be there. Because when you think about it, a lot of these kids aren't in a situation where they have their own room, where they're going to get 3 meals, where they're going to get a snack at the end of the night, where they're going to get,
Right.
points based on their behavior, which will allow them certain privileges. But it was sickening, and a lot of the staff didn't last that long, because you either got physically assaulted to the point that you were injured, or you did something to catch a case, and then you were out of a job, and then you can't work with children in that setting ever again because of the
Wow.
case. I was fortunate that I used I use my ability to pay attention and listen. And I didn't always come off as a know-it-all. I wanted to hear their story. I wanted to know what led them in this direction. And a lot of people don't understand that most of these kids, they're in this situation because they've dealt with a traumatic experience in life that has put them in the situation. And this is just who they are right now. And usually it has something to do with their environment, where they're living, their friends, who they associate with. And there's so much peer pressure. And as much as I would try to change things for them, it just never got better. And then I just felt
Well,
like I couldn't deal with it anymore.
now, Ali, before we go to commercial, one thing, because I tell people this, and I would love to get his thoughts on this. When we're looking at the way things currently are set up in the way that a lot of the youth that we see have this really tragic outlook on life. And what I explained to them is that the 70s and 80s and the kids, these are the parents of some of these kids now, these young men that you were monitoring in these facilities. These are the people that went on to have kids. So do you think there's some crossover there? Because like I said, I look at it and I go, okay, I know the people that I grew up around. I'm a grandfather now. So now
Mm-hmm.
if you in my age group and you were
Mm-hmm.
around for some of that stuff, and you have this mentality that lends to some of the behavior we seeing, or makes it easier for some of what we seeing now, because I think things are crazy now. No.
No, it's crazy now. And at the time when I was there, honestly, most of the children were the children of crack babies. So they
Wow.
were children whose parents were strung out. So they had no sense in what they were doing. They were just hot every night, ready to turn it up every day. They had no control of their ability to just make positive choices in life. And you had counselors that really didn't care. Being a father myself, I had, and I grew up without a father. My father, he lost his life in an automobile accident when I was 5. So I was raised in a single family household, my brother and I. So I know what it felt like to not have a father. And it just, for me, that was just one of the most important things for me in life, to father my children. And I looked at these young men as my children as well. And I would try to give them just something positive to think about at the end of the night. Before they would go to court, I would say the Lord's Prayer with them, to give them, positive feelings
Mm.
about what the results would be. But it would be sad because normally half the time they'd come right back. And it was, they would just get on their BS again, say
Wow.
they didn't care, you know?
One sec. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with Booker G's, the author of Locked Up and Put Away, discussing his 10 years as a juvenile counselor. We're going to take a very, very quick commercial break. We're going to come back. I got a couple of text message questions for you, brother. So we're going to get to that right after this quick commercial break here on the Urban Conservative Podcast, y'all. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of thinking for yourself? Sick of facts getting in the way of your feelings? Introducing Dimcratinol, the revolutionary pill that turns you into a full-blown, blissfully ignorant liberal. Bob used to think for himself, believe in hard work and personal responsibility, but then he tried Dimcratinol. Now he thinks the government should pay for everyone's unicorn rides. Climate change? It's real because feelings. And taxes? The more the merrier, as long as it's not his money. Dimcratinol works fast. Side effects may include sudden urges to virtue signal on social media, believing everything on CNN is gospel, forgetting how math works, especially budgets, compulsory recycling of other people's ideas, and in rare case, voting for policies that sound nice but bankrupt the country. Ask your doctor if Dimcratinol is right for you, or don't. Who needs doctors when you have vibes? Not approved by the FDA because facts are oppressive. Available at your local echo chain.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are back on the Urban Conservative Podcast. We are talking with the good brother Booker G's about his 10 years experience as a youth counselor working in some of these juvenile detention facilities. And you got a question here for somebody that texted. And the question is basically around mental health services. How much of the recidivism that you're seeing was due to a lack, in your opinion, of mental health services for these young people is what they're asking.
I would say a lot of it. I would
Mm.
say, you would think that these kids are criminal minded. No, their minds are lost. And half the time they were getting medication provided to them and they weren't taking it. They call it cheeking. They would put it to the side of their mouth and take it back out, toss it. Half the time they were selling it to each other. And these are little kids. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
And
hold up,
the si-
Booker. I gotta say this. You're not lying. This is how I know for a fact you're not lying. I was in a foster home, and I remember I didn't like going to school. Ali, you're gonna remember this. I used to just run away. Like that's what I would do. I would just run away. So they would take me to see a counselor, and the counselor gave us Ritalin.
Mm,
And and they try to give me the Ritalin, and I remember like spitting it out, like put it in my cheek, like I'm not taking
Mm-hmm.
that, and nobody would take it. Like we were
Right.
like nobody's taking that because the people that we saw taking it was like fiend out. It looked like almost
Mm-hmm.
like and then
They
we
were
were so we
sleepy
were
all the time.
scared. Yeah, and then it's like they were just sitting there, and then I'll never forget it. The one kid took it and was just sitting there drooling on the shelf, and they just let him sit there like that. So I was
That's
like,
how it
yeah, I'll
was.
never take that. Never
Right.
taking that. Yeah.
Right. Right. And the sad part about it is, just like the caller or the question said, this has everything to do with mental illness. Because like I said, they're actually dealing with a traumatic experience that they've encountered in their life, and it was never resolved. They never really had the proper counseling to get over whatever they dealt with, when they were younger. Could be at like 4 or 5, that they've seen something and they just had to live with it and get over it. And it was just regular life for them. And usually they don't really have any answers for the questions that they have. And while I was there, I would try to help them as much as possible answer any questions that they had. It wasn't a situation where we were given their reason for being there. We weren't told that. But a
Mm.
lot of these kids would brag about what they did. I mean, I speak about a situation where there's a young man in the facility, and he talked about punching a principal in the face, and all the kids fell in love with him. It was like, oh, he's a rude boy. That's my man. He's cool and everything. Come to find out, he was there because he raped his sister. And it was like, and his sister was the same age as my daughter. And I'm kicking it to this kid like I'm really bonding with him. But then the human part of me just couldn't come to grips with what he was there for. And it almost seemed like sometimes the counselors needed counseling, because we weren't ready for a lot of the things that were put in front of us. And half the time, if a kid was dealing with the mental illness issue, usually the psychologists and the doctors would be off on the weekends, and a kid would turn it up and go into a crisis, and we'd have to try to control them or keep them from having to go to the hospital until the doctor returned on Monday. And it was just tour after tour, a kid just turning it up and getting restrained over and over again. And
Yeah, I
it
just told
just isn't a
somebody that
matter.
word. I just told somebody that word restrained. And they were like,
Hmm.
what do you mean restrained? And I was like, physically held down until you stop doing whatever it is you're doing
All
until
day.
they're like, wait, they would just grab you? Yes. Well, what else would you do with
Yo,
someone
Hmm.
remember
that's
you remember you
flailing
remember
and
Mr. Kennedy?
hurting? And yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was
Short, this
6'5",
dude Kennedy,
300
6'5",
pounds.
300-pound dude would have to restrain me from because I'm wild. And it wasn't a I was just unruly. I'm old enough now to look back and just, yeah, it was
Hmm.
just causing trouble and I'm
Right.
emotionally angry. So
Right.
I got a question. I wanna kind of steer the conversation a little bit in this direction because I think it's important for people to get this book, especially if they're thinking about going into youth and all that kind of stuff. We got a brother here that just left a comment. Shout out to George Brooks. He said, fatherhood, especially Black fatherhood, is often under attack with current society, often due to left leaning policies and dogma. He also added that he's been a mental health advocate and nonprofit founder focusing on Black mental health while dealing with policymakers. I'm that comment, and thanks for the comment, Brother George, leads me to ask this. In your experience, is this like a politically swept under the rug kind of thing? Is there enough advocacy taking place for change? Like, what do you think that kind of that landscape looks like now? And from your experience,
Hmm.
enough being done from a policy perspective to help some of these young people?
Well, I know at the time when I wrote the book, there wasn't really anything being done. And when I spoke up and I was out there promoting the book, doing book signings, I didn't get a lot of attention, a lot of love. I mean, I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, the Daily News, and the Post. And just before they could put those articles out, they just stopped taking my calls. So they must have gotten a call from somewhere. We're not talking about this subject. We're not even going to discuss it in any way. Okay. And then what ended up happening around the time when I re-released the book, I saw that the Legal Aid Society was in the process of getting certain acts approved to protect youth offenders. You know, one of them is the Right to Remain Silent Act. You know, that's something that wasn't around 10 years ago. The Youth Justice and Opportunity Act, that wasn't around. And the last one is Youth Justice Innovation Fund, which would allow them to use some of the money that the city's providing for organizations to help young youth offenders under the age of 25. Those things weren't out at the time when I first released the book. So when I'm putting this book out there and I'm promoting it, the city is not very happy with the stuff I'm talking about because you have a lot of people in these high positions just making money off of these kids getting locked up. It's a cash cow. It's a rotating door. They keep making money. You know, when I was 10 years ago, it cost $407 a day to keep a kid locked up. Now it's up to like $800 a day. Okay. So the money's moving. They're making money on all parts of this. Even, I guess, our salaries. It's a great thing, but then you almost feel like, literally in there, you almost feel like you're working in a plantation and you're a slave catcher. And you just running around catching your own kids and grabbing them up and hemming them up and chicken winging them and putting them in restraints and handcuffing, shackling them. And it's like, yo, what are we doing, man? I mean, there was a time when I went through a period where I was just vibing with my group of kids that I was working with, no restraints. And I had a supervisor step to me and was like, yo, you're getting soft. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, everything's happy-go-lucky. Like, you know, he wanted me to restrain more kids. And I fell into the trap where it was like, for like 2 weeks straight, I'm like restraining like 2 kids a day. And I'm like, are you happy? Are you happy now? I'm just, you know, and I'm like, what am I getting myself caught up in? This is like chaos what I'm dealing with right here. And a lot of people that I've worked with are appreciative of me speaking about these issues because they go untalked about. And like I said in the beginning, I really appreciate you guys giving me this platform to talk about it because a lot of people don't want to discuss this.
We got a comment
Go
from
ahead.
real quick. We got a comment from the sister Annette Albright. Shouts out to Annette. Shouts out to Charlotte. The burnout rate for mental health providers is quick and high. And I agree with that. I'm curious in the field that you were in, was there a lot of turnover or was it such a good job that people tried to stick as long as they could?
Turnover was crazy.
Really?
People were quitting all the time. People were, I mean, it was a situation where we would, so I had an evening shift where I worked from 3 to 11. And usually, if there was no one to relieve me, I would have to stay. That would happen like 4 times a week. People would not come to work. People would set it up where they only work 3 days a day, 3 days a week. They would do 2 doubles in every day and then just not come in. And there was no repercussions or anything done to them for doing this. It just was something that would happen. There were times when I would have to work at Spofford because they were short men and they didn't have enough men. So I worked at Horizon in the Bronx. And what would happen is based on your seniority, you would have to get shipped out to Spofford for the overnight because there weren't anybody working there. And that place was a dungeon. That was the most craziest place I ever worked in my life because where I worked in Horizon, the door's locked. In Spofford, they don't. So the kids are just up all night like roaches, running in each other's rooms and everything. And you gotta patrol the area to make sure they don't do anything bad. And it's just
No, that was gladiator school right there. That was
OD. That was the
yeah. I try to
craziest
tell
thing
people they
ever.
don't understand. They yo that it, when you go through that, when you live through that, it gives you a certain perspective on violence. Like you get a
Oh,
yo. So I tell people like yo, you have to understand like there's a psychology of a certain group of people. Like you have to be careful with like the pranking and who you playing with, and you got to be
mm-hmm.
careful. Like you got some people walking around here that's barely holding it together, and they grew up in places like Spofford. They go from
Right.
zero to flashback, Like,
Right.
yo, you gotta relax, man. But
Mm-hmm.
yo, so I'm curious too. When did you realize like that there's no help coming? Because this
Mm.
seems to be systemic, and a lot of the times it becomes a partisan issue, Ali, where it shouldn't, because we're talking about young people. But when did you realize like nobody's interested in helping? Was there a point where you try to go to like your superiors and be like, yo, what are we doing here, and they just shut you down? Or like,
Well,
how
got
does that
shut
happen?
down. Got shut down. It's like stay in your lane. Don't even talk to me. And
Whoa.
in the book, you will see there is a transition from a more correctional facility to try to make it almost like an ACS facility. And what was bad about that was that the people at ACS, they're there to protect children,
Right.
understood, but they were protecting the children against us. And it turned out to be a situation where they changed the restraining technique, which would protect the kids, but it would create injuries for the staff the way it was set up. And more people were getting hurt, more people were getting suspended. And the more people that get suspended, the more people that get hurt, there's less people, there's less manpower. So you're drained. I mean, you're just working all the time. And you know, when you would call out, it would become an issue because you would lose money at the same time. And you wouldn't want to use your personal days to cover for calling out like that. So it was just something that was constantly happening. And I felt like for me, there was no answer. There was no help coming. There was nobody to speak to. I was, and I even go deeper into it because what was going on really was that most of my superiors, believe it or not, they weren't African American. They were
Right.
from other countries. Oh, they were either African or they were from Panama. They were from this country. So they don't know the upbringing of the African American man. And in a lot of ways, they look down on us. They didn't like us. So they treated us like shit. They didn't really care too much about us because at times they found us to be lazy. They found us to not really be as serious about the job itself. And I think that that had a lot to do with the fact that they weren't trying to help me at all. You know, I'm trying to make the situation a lot easier for everybody involved, especially the kids that I'm working with. And I just didn't seem to get the help that I needed. And what started to happen for me is I just started to not care. And I almost turned into like a supervillain. I was like, I got my crew right here, and these are my boys, and we don't want anybody else to come on this hall. And if somebody comes on the hall and they try to turn it up, I want you to smoke them off the hall. Get them out of here. I don't want them here. And then I just had to ask myself, what am I doing? And
Wow.
the kids love me. I still keep in touch with a lot of them today. And it just seemed like I couldn't help them the way it was set up. And that's when I figured the best way I could possibly make an impact on the entire situation is to speak about this in a book. And that's when I started to focus on writing the book. And once I wrote the book, I was done. I said, I can't do this another day. I'm out. And that's when I
Wow.
started promoting the book and talking about it. And you'll enjoy it because I go through everything that's going on in those facilities. And it's sad because a lot of this stuff is still going on today.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with Booker G's, author of the book that you see on your screen. Before we get into the lightning round, before we get to that, I did want to point out a few interesting statistics. On any given day in the United States, there's approximately 29,400 young people, youth, that are held in juvenile justice facilities nationwide. While confinement has declined since its peak in the 2000s, the United States continues to confine children at a rate nearly double the global average. That is per the Prison Policy Initiative. Males make up 85% of the confirmed juvenile population. Youth of color, so we're talking blacks and Hispanic youth, are incarcerated 5.6 times the rate of white youth, and Native youth are about 4 times as likely to be confined. overall, minority youth account for 67% of young people in residential detainment. Approximately 43% of detained youth are held for what they call person offenses, followed by property offenses. Public order or technical violations are at about 14% each, and drug offenses make up about 4%. The median stay for young people is brief, on average about 30 days for detained youth waiting adjudication, and 113 days is the average commitment for juveniles in the United States. Okay. Now, that's just some detail, just some data. So we think about this problem not just from the perspective of numbers, but we think about this from the perspective of these are young people, these are sons and daughters, these are people who have parents, and for whatever reason, this has really impacted minority students, minority young people. So something to consider. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it has come time, as you know, here on the Urban Conservative, we have a tradition. In order to get the screen full, Brother Booker, so you can plug the book properly with the full screen, you have to go through a lightning round, which is going to consist of some questions that my brother and I are going to ask. When you answer these questions, it's a lightning round, so you answer them as quickly as you possibly can. We will let you know when the lightning round is done. Brother Booker, are you ready for the lightning round, sir?
Let's go. Let's do
All
it.
right, Ross, on you.
All right, I'll do the first three. All right, here we
Okay.
go. Spades or dominoes?
Dominoes.
Martin or the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Martin.
Okay. Last one for me on this go round. Def Comedy Jam or Comic View?
Def Comedy Jam.
Go ahead, Ali.
Okay. I'm gonna go. Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. You ready? So, are we gonna do Showtime at the Apollo or Soul Train?
Oh, Soul Train, without a doubt.
I can dig it. All right. Okay. Uh, would you rather listen to mixtapes or the radio?
Mixtapes.
All right. Last one for me. All right. Oh my God, I'm gonna ask this one. Okay. Nike or Reebok?
Nike.
All right.
Definitely
What you
Nike.
got, Rob? Definitely
Okay.
Nike. I like it.
I got two. I got two for you. See, we gotta keep it culture right here. So
Okay.
if you're listening to this and you have no idea what we're talking about, this is the part of the show where you get a learning experience. Just look these things up, pause it, and then Google and come back. Video music box or Yo MTV Raps?
Video Music Box.
My man, I see. I do.
All right.
We
Okay.
there. All
All
right.
right.
Mhm.
Dollar Van or Subway?
Ooh.
Let's.
That's a good one.
Ooh.
I have to say Subway, bro.
Okay. Uh, Skate Key or Block Party?
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yes.
I went there, bro. I took you there.
Wow.
Yeah, that happened.
I've been to both. I skate key, bro. Like that was an experience.
Yeah, Skate Kid.
That
Yeah.
skate key is classic, B. It's classic.
All
All right,
right, he went
I
Skate
got
Kid.
two more. I got two
I
more,
got
Ali.
let me get these last. Let me get my last three in here. Let me get my
Okay, go
last
ahead.
three. All right. This is gonna be a tough one, Brother Booker. Now, if you're at home, you might get this. School lunch pizza or a beef patty and cocoa bread.
Yo, beef patty and cocoa bread, bro.
All
Okay.
right. All right. All right. All right. I think I'm gonna go. Okay, I think I'm gonna go with this one. I think I'm gonna
You
go with
got the
this one.
last one. Go ahead. That's the
All right,
time. Go ahead. You got the
I'm gonna
last
go
one.
with this. I'm gonna go with this one. The candy lady or the ice cream truck?
The ice cream truck. The ice
I'm
cream
in.
truck. Without a doubt.
I'm in. Okay, I like it. Ladies and gentlemen, Brother Booker has survived the
I
lightning round
survived.
here on the Urban Conservative. Absolutely. Pass with flying colors. We are going to give you the screen full. You take the screen, brother, plug away. Tell the people how they can support what you're doing and support the book. The screen is all yours.
Okay, you could purchase my book on Amazon.com. It's available on BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, all the major online book selling outlets you can find my book available. Also, I'm on IG. You can find me at Lupa Justice. That's where I am on IG. And also on Facebook, I use two different sites, but the two different pages, but one is Lupa Justice and also Booker G's. You can find me there as well. Twitter, Booker G's, you can find me there as well. But definitely
Indeed.
get the book.
Lady,
You'll love it.
Definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been kicking it with the good brother Booker G's. As we like to tell all of our guests, brother, the one thing you will not get more of in this life is time. So for taking a little bit of your time to spend with us and our audience, we are eternally grateful. We hope to have you back here on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you get the book Locked Up and Put Away, 10 Years as a Juvenile Counselor by the good brother Booker G's. This has been the Urban Conservative Podcast for my twin brother, Raheem Architect Soto. I'm Abdul Ali. That's the brother of Booker G's down there at the bottom.
Thank you,
Y'all have a
fellas.
good rest of
Appreciate
your
it.
evening. Peace and love, y'all.
Peace.